We greatly appreciate you taking your time out today. We know time is valuable to hear about our program a little bit. As you can see, the title of our program today is Winter is Coming, for those Game of Thrones fans out there. So I would like to say that I put a lot of information in here that really applies everywhere in the country, because as I thought about it, winter means different things to different parts of the country. So this is not going to be just what we do when it snows. It's going to be, any inclement weather. What do we do? I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the questions we continue to get day after day relative to our program. So I think you'll find it very worthwhile. And we try to make these things as educational as possible. What I'll do is run through these screens fairly quickly, and then we'll open it up for questions. Everything's on the table, so whatever questions you have, by all means. And if you don't want to ask as we get to the public part of this, you'll have my contact information. You can pick up the phone and call me, email me, or anybody on my team here in Jacksonville. Love to hear from you. So once again, winter is coming. So a lot of things we're going to talk about, like I said, can really apply whether it's winter or not. So a lot of what we tell the builders, the contractors, as we were talking to them, is stay pretty tuned into the weather. As they're predicting storms coming your way, there's a lot of things you can do. A lot of it is just tying down equipment, making sure if you, it'd be great to be able to have a building enclosed before a storm comes and things of that nature. So it's all about protecting your equipment. And I know this is a builder's risk program, but a lot of what we talk about today will be protecting your employees. So that's critical too to all of this. So we'll get into that as we talk about it. Once again, keeping the job site clean, not only in the cold weather areas, but all over, pick stuff up, try to eliminate puddles of water and ice and whatever we have. And I think it warrants having a meeting every once in a while, just reminding the employees of how things change when the weather is a little adverse, I guess we'll say. I want to spend a little bit of time on mobile heaters, because that seems to be the thing that burns buildings down. Some friends of mine in Canada really do not like writing frame builders risk, because they've had a very, very poor experience up there. And it's pretty much predominantly in the winter months, and it's mobile heaters. They just leave them on, or they tip them over. There's all kinds of things that can happen. So, these mobile hotspots, and we can even say that again, is they have to designate someone, a project manager, to walk the job site at the end of the day to make sure these things are turned off, make sure that they're safe. Some of our largest claims have come from things like heaters and welding torches and things that are left on overnight. So, I was looking through our top 10 claims just this week, and half the claims are fires, and they're mostly avoidable. One of our largest claims is a tornado that hits Dallas. Okay, there's not a lot we can do about that. We can talk about mitigating the claim and, like I said, tying down equipment. But when I read about things where the subcontractor left a light bulb on overnight and it burned up the building, those can be, we can eliminate those type of claims. So we really need your help when you're talking to the insureds. And it seems like common sense, but you got to keep reminding them of it. Proper requirement for storage of materials. Anytime you have extreme heat or extreme cold, that's going to impact the materials dramatically. So they have to understand that. Obviously, piping. One of the things I hear a lot about in builder's risk now is water intrusion. Think about a multi-story building. You got a frozen pipe. It breaks over the weekend. Nobody's there. It floods the whole building. These things generate, millions of dollars of claims. So protect the piping as much as possible. Talk about breathable air. This is more workers' comp related, but I do think it's important. Make sure there's proper ventilation. We don't want anything combustible building up. Heaters, God, I'm going to talk about heaters a lot today. Just don't leave them unattended. Simple as that. And once again, as soon as you can enclose the structure, the better off it is. Kind of goes without saying. One of the things I've talked to a lot of contractors about is their generator. The heart of the project of a small construction project is the generator. So if you look at a generator, you think of your truck or your car, that is the generator. It has to be winterized. It has to be serviced because if the generator goes down, sometimes that shuts down everything that's going on. So once again, probably not a piece of equipment that you should get the cheapest generator. They should buy a good generator and then maintain it properly. Once again, before the weather gets really, really cold is the time to test all of this stuff. It's kind of interesting, you know, I live in the South, so we really don't have cold weather, but we do have hurricane season, so we go through a lot of this. We test our generators. We make sure we have fuel supplies and all those things before the season starts. So this is all about precautionary stuff before these things start. And once again, don't wait till the last minute. You know, their snowstorm's supposed to hit tomorrow, so you start thinking you're going to take care of things today. Might be too late at that point. So think ahead a little bit. And I do think, as always, if you continue to remind your insureds of this, it adds credibility for you. You're more than just a salesperson that's selling them a product. You're trying to make their job site safer. You're trying to reduce their claims. So ultimately, it's better for the efficiency of their job and all of that. I was reading a lot about, I knew there was some new materials out there that are more resistant to the cold, but there's still a lot of things that are impacted by severely cold weather, not just the concrete and the masonry work, the caulking that's used. Sometimes too, this is how do you store the materials before you use them. You know, you got to be careful where you put them. You can't just leave them in a non-heated room, because you might come on Monday morning and everything's frozen, and then what do you do? And the other thing is, and I've been reading more about this as far as how this impacts the structural integrity of a building. If you use masonry products and they don't set up properly, maybe they look fine, but they're not set up properly. That could lead to a collapse somewhere down the road. And I'm wondering sometimes with some of our collapses that we get involved in, it could have been something like this and we didn't even know it. So I do think the contractors need to really understand the chemical makeup of all the materials they're using, and all of these things are impacted by the weather. I started thinking about the weather and how it impacts different types of equipment, and I thought about the space shuttle a number of years ago. You know, it dipped down into the 30s in Central Florida and froze some of those valves, and we all know what happened. So these things, it doesn't have to be below zero. Maybe it's just below freezing in an area that's not used to seeing that kind of weather. So these are all things that apply really everywhere in the country. I didn't think about things like paint. Maybe that's not structural, but it could be very expensive if they leave paint exposed or they use the wrong kind of paint, and then it doesn't cure properly. We're looking at a big claim. Some of these things might not be covered by insurance too. It's kind of like user error, I guess I'd say. So that was kind of some of the common sense stuff that I wanted to run through very quickly on the cold weather type stuff. Like I said, it really applies to tropical storms and everything else too. So now what I'd like to do is switch our thinking a little bit, and I want to talk about some things that are literally coming up every day. I've already addressed some of these things today, and it seems to be a lot of confusion in the marketplace. So first of all, and I know I've talked about this before in past webinars, but we have a completed value builder's risk form. And a lot of people seem to, for whatever reason, they don't listen or they don't understand what completed value is. And I try to make it as simple as possible. So completed value is just that. What is the completed value of the project once the project is done? Total labor, materials, and overhead, and profit if they want to insure that. So total labor, materials, overhead, and profit. That's completed value. Another way of looking at that is what is the selling price of the project minus the value of the land. If all of us always wrote our policies for that value, it would be a much better place, a much better world that we live in. Because when you underinsure something, you understand this is a co-insurance form and that presents problems. And there again, what if it's underinsured and there's a large uncovered claim, and the insured finds out for 20 cents per 100 of these materials and labor, they could have insured that exposure. They're not going to be too happy. It's almost like I always say, we don't want to be penny wise and pound foolish. I've actually had agents ask me, well, what if I just lowered the limit and then I could get a better premium? I'm like, That's not what you should be thinking. We should be thinking, what is the proper value we need to insure this for? This is not a value at risk form. This is a completed value form. So we understand that sometimes throughout the course of a project, the values would change. They decide they want better flooring or better windows or better countertops. So the $2 million home becomes the $2.2 million home. Okay, that makes sense. That's logical. But the other day I had one that started out at $2 million, and before we were done, it was a $6 million home. They didn't understand what completed value was. They didn't quite. I said, we need to insure this properly from day one. Completed value from day one. Think about it from a carrier perspective. Builder's risk is predicated at going from 0 amount of risk to 100% at risk. So if they don't insure it for the completed value, then it's not a good deal for the carrier either, because all our risk is at the end of a project, not at the beginning of the project. So I'll get off my soapbox a little bit, but keep in mind completed value. If you have any questions and you don't understand what the completed value is of something, then by all means pick up the phone and call me. So consider the side effects, the effects of coinsurance. We all know what that does. And what you're really trying to do is protect the client. You want to tell the client, we want to make you whole again if there's a claim. Simple as that. It's not complicated. We get asked questions a lot. I like this picture here too. I've actually talked to contractors, but when does coverage end? And every form is a little different. I'm going to go over our form quickly today because it really depends on what type of risk it is. But coverage can end. There's different clauses that affect that. And in our form, we have two ways of writing business, either residential, detached 1 to 4 family, or all other construction structures would be commercial. Two different things. So on the residential side of this, there's a few things that happen when coverage ends. One would be 90 days after occupancy. So they can move in and they can occupy the building for up to 90 days, but on that 91st day, there is no coverage on that structure. If they're going to be in the structure longer than that, you have to get permission to occupy. You got to tell us about it. It's going to cost more money. Okay, so there's a few other things that happen too. Maybe we've written it in the name of the builder. Once the closing happens and there's no financial interest the builder has, it's now the homeowner's interest, then obviously there's no coverage on our builder's risk form. When permanent property insurance applies, there's no coverage on our form. So there's a few other things and understanding about on the residential side. On the commercial side, we have a pretty broad wording in our form, which says if the building is being leased or rented to others, up to 75% of the square footage can be occupied, and there's still coverage on our form. Once it goes over that 75%, you have to let us know. We have to add permission to occupy, which is an endorsement to extend the coverage. So kind of the key on this ground up new construction is letting us know what's going on, as always. If there's any questions, by all means. We have another little clause that says if it's a 2, 3, or 4 unit structure, once more than 50% is occupied, there's no coverage. So obviously quadruplex, once that third unit's leased out, coverage ends at that point. We just want to make sure that there's no uncovered claims. Keep that in mind. Renovation, so in remodeling, it's a little different. So there are some instances where they can occupy the building if it's a single family dwelling and it's going to be occupied during the remodeling, that's okay. But if it's going to be anything other than single family, you have to let us know, and there might be a need to add permission to occupy on the renovation side. And the other piece of renovation is we do not insure vacant structures. What that means is we have a structure and we're going to renovate it, and there's no ongoing construction activity. So it's just a vacant structure. If there is no ongoing construction activity for 60 consecutive days, then coverage would cease, or it would be very minimal coverage at that point. So once again, it's kind of the opposite end of occupancy, but keep in mind, there has to be ongoing construction activity on a project in order to be covered. And I already covered the lease to rented to others on the commercial side, the 75% rule. On the residential side, once the single family dwelling is leased to others, coverage ceases at that point. That now becomes a rental dwelling. You need to get permanent insurance on the project. Let's talk a little bit about remodeling. It's about 1/3 of what we do. About 2/3 is ground up new construction. On the remodeling side, All we're going to ask is for the basic COPE, construction occupancy protection exposure. And the only thing in addition to that is we want a description of the project. Just tell us what they're doing. You know, you can't just say it's a remodeling project. What are they doing? You know, are they putting new windows, new flooring in? Are they painting it? Are they putting new carpet in? Are they putting a new roof on? All those things are fine. You know, it's an interior gut rehab. No load-bearing walls being affected. Not adding any square footage, vertical, whatever. They're not doing any of that. So simply we call it the scope of the project or the description of the project. Just one paragraph, attach that to the application. When you send it in, and we're off and running. We do take a very hard look at structural projects. It doesn't mean we're not going to do it. We're going to ask a lot of questions, and we're going to underwrite it very thoroughly, because these are one of our largest claims we've had to date was a collapse by a contractor that told us they were not doing structural work, and then they did, and the building collapsed. So these are things that definitely are a higher exposure, and you need to let us know if there is structural work being done. We're going to need things like engineering letters. We're going to price the risk accordingly. Here's the other thing that happens, and this is normal. I have friends that are builders, so they sign on. They're doing a remodeling of a building, and they discover that there's a structural flaw. So they say, well, I think I can fix it, even though I never have fixed it before. So they attempt to shore up the building and do something to the load-bearing wall, and sure enough, it collapses. So once again, they went beyond their level of ability. You know, make sure they don't do that. Those were some of the hot topics of the day. These are the things that we get every day: insurance to value, total insured value, completed value, occupancy clause, the vacancy clause. These are the things that happen to us every day. So just want to run through those really quick. What I'd like to do now is open this up for questions. So whatever questions you have of the day, this is the time to ask. I look forward to it.
Hey, Jeff, there's no questions just yet. Why don't we give everyone a minute or so?
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I can keep talking. I got a lot to talk about. It's not a problem. I just thought I'd open it up to break it up a little bit. Yeah, it's kind of interesting when you have a builder's risk program, and it's, you know, people think, well, there's not that much exposure. You know, we had a claim the other day, and it was a big one. You know, we have some pretty big claims once in a while. And I always ask myself as an underwriter, was it written properly? You know, in this case it was, so that was good. But, you know, this is when you really take a hard look at your coverage form, and you take a hard look at how it was submitted, the information you had, the decisions you made. And we just want to pass on all that information as quickly as we can.
All right, we've got a couple questions.
All right.
So first one, can you write on Miami Beach, a high school that's 3 stories?
Can I write on Miami Beach? Winter is coming. I like that. No, it's kind of funny. We're all going to go to Miami because winter is coming. We do right on the coast, even in South Florida. We underwrite it. We take a hard look at it. We watch our capacity. So I'm going to be like a politician here and say we would take a look at something like that. It's going to depend on the construction. It's going to depend on exactly where it is located, the distance to the tidal water, the distance to the coast. But we do write a fair amount of business in South Florida. So it's worth a conversation. Send it in and we'll take a look at it.
All right, next question. If subcontractors bring heaters to a new construction job site, but the general contractor provides the fuel, who would be liable or responsible for maintenance or damage of the heaters?
Well, keep in mind now, from a builder's risk standpoint, regardless of who brought the heater and who brought the fuel and who left it plugged in, we're going to pay the claim. Now, I will say, if it's blatant, you know, it was blatantly the subcontractor's fault, we would reserve the right to subrogate against the subcontractor if it was their fault, if you could prove that to their GL carrier. But the bottom line is the builder's risk carrier is going to pay the claim if it burns down. So, ultimately though, if we pay the claim and the general contractors aren't insured, that goes on his loss experience. So over time, if you have a GC that has a lot of claims, obviously they're going to pay more for insurance. It's not going to be a good thing for them going forward. So I would think the ultimate responsibility lies with the general contractor, the project manager. These are the people that should go over the job site every day, at the end of every day, looking for hot spots. They should be there supervising the subcontractors, making sure they're doing things like that that are correct. So hopefully that answers your question.
All right. I think that is all of the questions that people seem to have for you today.
All right, guys. Well, I want to wish you a happy holiday season. We're almost there. It's almost Thanksgiving. And we're here. Oh, I was going to say, there we go. There's our contact information. You will see that we have a new name. We now are Victor Insurance. We're excited about that. We had a big rebranding campaign last week. So keep in mind when you call us, that's how we answer the phone now. But it's the same great coverage form that we've had. We have the same underwriting team. We're doing very well in the marketplace now. We'd love to write some more business. So by all means, there's our contact information, and call us or email us at any time. We're here to help you. You guys all have a great day. Take care.